Lewis Hamilton just got out of the Ferrari, and what he revealed about those upgrades could explain a performance shift of multiple tenths per lap. Same car, same test, same conditions, but something did not feel the same, because this was not a normal upgrade. We are talking about a completely reworked floor, a new front wing changing how the air flows through the car, and the return of the most controversial system on the grid, the rotating rear wing, the one that already failed, the one that caused instability, the one Ferrari had to remove, and now it is back. But here is what makes this moment so important. Hamilton did not talk about speed. He talked about behavior. A car that feels sharper, more reactive, more sensitive to every single input. And that is not always an advantage, because when a car becomes this precise, it also becomes unforgiving. And inside that difference, between speed and control, is the detail Hamilton just revealed. The one that could turn this Ferrari into the fastest car on the grid, or the most difficult one to drive when it matters most. At first, it sounded like a normal reaction. Just another driver giving feedback. Just another test. Just another step forward. But when you listen closely, what Hamilton described is not normal, because he was not talking about speed. He was talking about control. From the first laps, the car felt different. More front-end grip, more rotation mid-corner, more downforce coming from the floor, exactly as Ferrari intended. And in those moments, the car feels incredible, sharp, precise, fast, the kind of feeling every driver wants. But then something changes. Not suddenly, subtly, as the lap evolves, as the tires start to move, as the load shifts through the car. The behavior becomes more sensitive. Steering inputs need to be cleaner. Throttle application needs to be smoother. Every correction becomes more noticeable. And that is where Hamilton's message becomes clear. This is not just a faster car. This is a narrower car. A car that operates in a very specific window. Inside that window, it is extremely competitive. Outside of it, everything becomes harder. And that is not something you see in a single lap. It builds, corner after corner, lap after lap. Now here is where the upgrades play a critical role, because the new floor is generating more downforce, but also reacting more to ride height and airflow changes. The front wing is amplifying that behavior, making the front even more aggressive. And the rear has to stabilize everything perfectly, especially with that rotating rear wing back in action, because when that system engages, it changes the airflow completely. And when it disengages, everything has to reconnect instantly. If that transition is perfect, the car feels planted. If it is not, even slightly, the balance shifts. And that shift is what Hamilton is detecting, not as a failure, but as a limit. Because this is not a car that gradually loses performance. It is a car that reaches a peak and stays right on the edge of it, which means the driver is always managing that limit. Not just chasing speed, but controlling it. And that changes everything. Because now the question is no longer, how fast is the car? It is, how often can it be that fast? Because if that performance is consistent, Ferrari has found something very powerful. But if it only appears under perfect conditions, then what Hamilton revealed becomes critical. This is a car that demands precision, constant precision, and in Formula One, that is the hardest thing to maintain, especially when the pressure builds and everything starts to move. That is when the real behavior appears, the one you cannot hide, the one Hamilton already felt before anyone else could see it. And this is where everything starts to connect, because what Hamilton felt is not just about handling. It is about what happens when the car is no longer in perfect conditions. Because at Monza, everything is controlled. Clean air, predictable grip, smooth evolution through the lap. But Formula One is never like that in reality. And Hamilton knows it. That is why his feedback goes beyond the test itself. Because he is already thinking about the next step. What happens when the tires begin to fade? What happens when the track temperature changes? What happens when the car is no longer perfectly balanced? And that is where this Ferrari becomes a question mark. Because a sensitive car reacts to everything. Every bump, every gust of wind, every small variation in grip. And what feels precise in a test can become unstable in a race. Now, think about the role of the floor again. Because this is where everything begins. The revised floor is generating more downforce, but it is also more dependent on exact ride height and airflow conditions. That means even small changes can affect how the car behaves. And when that happens, the front wing reacts. the balance shifts. The rear has to compensate instantly. And with the rotating rear wing in play, that chain reaction becomes even more critical, because the moment that system disengages, the airflow has to stabilize immediately. If it does not, even for a fraction of a second, the car feels different. Not dramatically, but enough. Enough for a driver like Hamilton to notice. Enough to affect confidence. Enough to change how you approach the next corner. And that is where the real cost appears. Because in Formula One, confidence is lap time. If the driver hesitates even slightly, the advantage disappears. Now, this is where the contrast with Leclerc becomes important. Leclerc feels the front. He builds speed through rotation. He commits early. He adapts naturally to that aggressive balance. Hamilton feels the whole car. He looks for consistency. He builds rhythm. He needs predictability. And right now, this Ferrari is giving them both something different. Speed and sensitivity. Potential and pressure. And that combination is exactly what makes this situation so dangerous. Because Ferrari has not just created a faster car. They have created a car that operates on a very fine edge. And the closer you get to that edge, the harder it becomes to stay there. Especially over a full race distance. Because that is the final piece. Not one lap, not one corner, but consistency. Lap after lap, under pressure, with changing conditions. That is where Hamilton's insight becomes critical. Because he is not reacting to what the car is doing now. He is anticipating what it will do later. And that is something you cannot simulate. You can only feel it. And once you feel it, you cannot ignore it. Which means everything now leads to one unavoidable moment. The first race where this car is pushed without limits. Where the sensitivity is tested. Where the balance is exposed. Where the performance has to be repeatable. And that is where we will finally understand if what Hamilton revealed was the key to unlocking Ferrari's speed, or the warning sign of a car that might be too precise to survive real racing conditions. And this is where everything reaches its breaking point, because there is one thing Hamilton understands better than almost anyone on the grid. A fast car is not enough. It has to be repeatable. And right now, that is the biggest question around this Ferrari, because what he felt at Monza was not a limitation in speed. It was a limitation in consistency. A car that can deliver incredible performance, but only when everything is exactly right. And that is the problem. Because in Formula One, everything is never exactly right. Now imagine the full race scenario. Fuel load high at the start. Tires not yet in the perfect window. Dirty air from cars ahead. The balance shifts immediately. That precise front end becomes more nervous. That sensitive floor reacts to every small change. That rear has to constantly adapt. And the driver has to manage all of it, lap after lap. Now fast forward to the middle of the race. Tires degrading, grip falling, track temperature changing. This is where stable cars stay competitive. But sensitive cars start to move. Not dramatically, but enough. Enough to force corrections. Enough to reduce confidence. Enough to cost time. And that is exactly what Hamilton was pointing to. Because he is not measuring peak performance. He is measuring how long that performance lasts. And right now, this Ferrari has not answered that question. Now here is where everything becomes even more critical. Because of the championship context, other teams are not dealing with this level of sensitivity. They are developing stability, consistency, predictability, which means their drivers can push without thinking. And that is the real advantage in Formula One. Not just speed, freedom, the freedom to attack every corner without hesitation. And that is exactly what Ferrari risks losing. Because when a car demands too much precision, the driver holds back, even if it is just a fraction. And that fraction is the difference between winning and chasing. Now, everything points to one final moment. Miami, not as another race, as the test that decides everything. Because that is where this car will face reality. Long straights, heavy braking zones, slow corners, traction zones, every weakness exposed. Every strength tested. If the car holds together, if the balance remains stable, if the performance is repeatable, then Hamilton's feedback becomes the foundation of a breakthrough. But if it does not, if the sensitivity appears under pressure, if the performance drops over a stint, if the drivers cannot fully trust it, then what he revealed at Monza becomes something else entirely. Not insight, a warning that Ferrari has built a car with incredible potential. But one that lives so close to the edge that even the smallest deviation can bring everything down. And this is where the real conclusion begins to form. Because when you strip everything back, all the upgrades, all the data, all the testing, it comes down to one thing: trust. Not speed, not innovation, not even potential. Trust. And right now, that is exactly what Ferrari is still building. Because what Hamilton revealed is not just how the car behaves, it is how much confidence it gives. And at the highest level of Formula One, confidence is everything. It decides braking points. It defines corner entry speed. It determines whether a driver commits or hesitates. And with this SF-26, that line is extremely thin. Because when everything works, the car is exceptional. Fast on the straights, sharp in the corners, responsive in every phase. But the moment something changes, even slightly, that confidence drops. Not completely, just enough. Enough to make the driver think. Enough to delay that instinctive reaction. Enough to lose time. And that is the detail that changes everything. Because Ferrari is no longer chasing performance. They have found it. What they are chasing now is control over that performance. The ability to access it every lap, in every condition. And that is much harder. Because it is not about adding more upgrades. It is about stabilizing what already exists. Now this is where everything connects to the final truth. Because if Ferrari solves this, if they widen that operating window, if they reduce that sensitivity, if they give both drivers the same level of confidence, then this car becomes something very dangerous. Not just fast, complete. A car that can qualify at the front and stay there over a full race distance. But if they do not, if the sensitivity remains, if the window stays narrow, if the drivers continue to feel different limits, then the outcome becomes clear. This is a car with peaks, not consistency, moments of brilliance, but not control. And in Formula One, that is not enough to dominate. That is enough to compete, but not to win consistently. So when the lights go out, this will not be about what Ferrari built. It will be about what they can sustain. Because the real difference is not how fast the car can be, is how often it can be that fast. And that is the answer Hamilton has already pointed to. Quietly, indirectly, but clearly, Ferrari has unlocked something powerful. Now they have to prove they can actually use it.